Thank you for joining us today for this empowered chat on why cybersecurity is important for private equity. I am here today with Erik Schumacher, who is the leader of the private equity group and a principal of our advisory and tax. I'm also with Jessica Dore, who is the principal of our technology solutions. Welcome, you guys.
Hi,
Thank
nice to be
you.
here.
Now, Jessica, I'm going to start with you. What are some common cybersecurity threats that private equity firms should be aware of?
Yeah, there's a lot of security threats out there, but I would say some of the biggest ones that we've seen impact organizations would be ransomware. So that's continuously been a big threat out there. For those of you that aren't familiar, ransomware, typically comes in through a phishing type email where somebody opens something and then the hacker is able to plant the ransomware internally into the environment. And then essentially what they do once the ransomware is in the environment, they encrypt all of the data. So they work to encrypt all of the systems, all of the data. If there's backups that are directly tied to the network, they're going to work to encrypt those. And then what they're going to do is then hold those, your files essentially for ransom. So they want you to pay the ransom to get back your data and access to your systems, right? And so, what we have seen, that is a continuous uptick from that perspective. So private equity firms, definitely need to be on the lookout for that. As I mentioned, a lot of times the way ransomware gets in is through phishing emails. Phishing emails, it's not something that's new, but it's something that continues to become or to get more sophisticated. So with all of the AI and the different programs out there that can help these bad guys craft very sophisticated emails that people fall for and that people click on these links. And so once they click on the link, either it's potentially implanting ransomware or another type of program into the environment, or it is going to try to steal information from the user. So whether that's, get them to enter login credentials or sensitive information or things along those lines. And especially with the very sensitive data that private equity firms hold, they want to be able to get into these environments so that they can then siphon out that information and then potentially sell it, on the dark web or other places from that perspective. So, ransomware and phishing continue to be, the biggest threats we see from our side. Another thing that I'll just mention as well too is compromised credentials or weak passwords. Also, we know that users hate having long, strong, complex passwords, right? And so when you have a weak password and you don't have any kind of multi-factor authentication in place, it makes it very easy for these bad actors to get into accounts. And again, like I said, if a bad actor is out there, wanting to get this sensitive information, they're going to try to guess people's passwords. And if you don't have a long, strong, complex password in place, then it makes it that much easier for those hackers to get into the accounts. And if they're able to essentially breach those accounts, they're able to get access to the information, able to get access to the environment, and then take their attacks from there. So those I would say are the biggest threats that we're seeing right now. Like I said, nothing really completely new, but just that they're getting more and more sophisticated, and we continuously see an uptick in the amount of the attacks that are happening.
Thank you, Jessica. Now, Erik, why is it so important for firms to invest in their cybersecurity, especially with all these different phishing attempts?
Yeah, so Jessica hit it right on the head, right? Private equity firms and their portfolio groups are prime targets, right? Folks know that they have a lot of sensitive data, a lot of financial data. And so like we see in other financial institutions, they're a prime target for these attacks because there's a lot of reward, right? If somebody can get into their infrastructure and hold them ransom or even access some of their financial data. In their case at the fund level, they've got a lot of sensitive data on their investors as well, who are typically high net or institutional type investors that you really don't want to see that, be the cause of a leak or a reason that information gets out in the black web or the dark web. Another thing that we see in our practice, which is starting to become more and more commonplace, is cybersecurity due diligence, right? So these funds are out buying a lot of different businesses and different industries of different sizes, different infrastructures on their IT platforms, different cybersecurity protocols or habits or what it might be. And so, one thing we recommend to our clients in the space on the transactional side is a good cybersecurity assessment during the due diligence process. Understand what kind of, infrastructure you're inheriting and cybersecurity practices of that portfolio company, and make sure that you are aware of what might need to be addressed pre-closing, at closing, and post-closing. Is just a good housekeeping item that usually is not a real, cumbersome thing to undertake in the due diligence process. And then, a post-close integration, these funds have a lot of, again, portfolio companies, which are all gateways into their infrastructure. They have probably more opportunity for numbers of people, number of, users that they interact with than most of our just traditional standalone businesses. So there's a lot of different gateways where, these cyber security hackers or, threats can come about. So they just need to be more cognizant of it, especially, again, back to what Jessica said. They're a prime target. They have a lot of data that's very sensitive that people want. And so they just need to be very proactive on this space.
Okay, so they're doing their due diligence, but they want to get ready today. Jessica, what are some steps that our audience can take starting today to get their cybersecurity to where it needs to be?
Absolutely. So I just want to circle back to what Erik said, in the whole due diligence process, that is so very important, because especially when you're looking at a lot of these smaller portfolio companies, they don't have the sophisticated IT controls. So it's very important to make sure that you're not potentially opening any doors there, because of the lack of formalized controls or important security measures in place. So, that was a perfectly illustrated point there from that perspective. And then some other things that they can do, cybersecurity awareness training. So we talked about the phishing, right? It's so important to educate employees on the cyber best practices. Cybersecurity isn't just an IT issue, it's a business issue in total. And so everyone has a role in cybersecurity, and making sure that you're educating your employees about the different threats that are out there and about the actions that they need to take and what they need to do their part in safeguarding the organization is very key. Multi-factor authentication. So wherever you can implement multi-factor authentication at the login, do it. It is another hurdle that creates that portion where the hackers, it's going to put another control in place that the hackers have to get past to be able to get into these systems. Because we talked about weak passwords, right? So if people are using weak passwords and they're using the same password across multiple accounts, it makes it that much easier for those bad guys to get in. So the use of multi-factor and then strong passwords is another thing you can do today, and get in place from that perspective. Access controls. So making sure too that you've got access appropriately configured for your users. So they shouldn't have, it's least privilege, right? So they shouldn't have more access than they need to perform their job function. So make sure you're regularly reviewing the access that the individuals have and making sure that any administrative access is extremely restricted, so that only those necessary have that access. Backup and recovery. So when we talked about ransomware, one of the big ways to recover from a ransomware attack is to restore from a backup. Making sure you have your backup strategy properly structured so that you have backups that are air gapped, which means that if the hackers are able to get in, you have a copy of the backups that are disconnected from the network so they can't encrypt that copy. So making sure that you have, the backups properly structured, and then that those are being executed and tested on a regular basis, so that in the event you do get hit with ransomware, you can recover from that attack. Some other things too to consider, next generation antivirus, endpoint detection, and response programs. Software companies have come a long way in developing solutions to be able to combat these hackers out there. So making sure you're getting, the most current software programs that can help and aid you in protecting your environment from these threats. And then network monitoring as well too, making sure that you have a baseline set for your network and that you're monitoring against that and monitoring for any threats that are both from an external perspective and an internal perspective, so that you're aware of the threats, and then those threats are getting shut down, and the hackers are unable to get in the environment from that side. So those are some of the things that you can start with by starting today.
Oh, thank you guys. Now here we are at wrapping up. Do you guys have any last thoughts or anything that you would like to leave our audience with?
I'll jump off real quick and just say again, I think you can't overstate the importance of cybersecurity for private equity firms from a standpoint of they are a prime target. We're seeing an increase in the threats that are being, attempted on them and their portfolio groups. So, again, I just caution anybody who might be listening to make sure cybersecurity is top of mind, just as it would be with any other financial institution.
And I would echo Erik's comments. The private equity firms are a big target, like we said, because of the sensitive information and the high net worth that is associated with that. One of the things that Raymond works with our clients to do is really help make sure from a cyber organizational perspective that the proper cybersecurity governance and controls are in place. So I would, make sure that, you're looking at it from that perspective, and, really making sure you're ready from a cyber perspective to tackle all of these challenges. And like I said, that's where, we come in to be able to help, set that cybersecurity governance structure so that you can then build the proper cybersecurity controls to safeguard your firm.
Okay, it looks like we are just about to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank everyone who is listening. We will have in the article below a free 5-step process guide for your cybersecurity. Thank you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.